Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hard Nine podcast. Today is November something. I forget. I'm retired. I don't remember the exact date, but it's somewhere in the middle of the month. And we are, as you notice, now three of us, joined by Kyle Reis, one of our favorite guys. I'm so happy to have you back, man. Thank you for coming on and making time for us.
Oh, you guys, it's always my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it. It's fun to talk about stuff actually happening instead of just, getting into the speculation of it all.
Yeah, which is really all Caleb and I do all the time. Well, we think this will happen, and then none of it ever happens. So here we are.
No.
But today, Caleb, I'll let you take it from here. But today we actually did have a lot of news. So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, so obviously the Rule 5 selections and protecting your players on your 40-man roster happened today. And the Cardinals elected to protect three guys, Sim Bursa, Adam Kloffenstein, and Pedro Pajes. And obviously Ian Bedell was left unprotected. DFA'd, well, I mean, Naughton was outrighted, I think. They DFA'd, who they DFA? Who was it?
Connor Thomas.
There was Connor Thomas. And
Yep.
then yesterday, Wilking Rodriguez was let go. So what were your thoughts on those moves? Because I know, the 40-man roster, it's always like a conversation, but it really shouldn't be as much of a conversation as it always is. But what were your thoughts on those three?
Yeah, my reaction is I always react to the 40-man moves involving minor leaguers. And I do a poor job of articulating exactly what I'm trying to say on Twitter. My my criticisms, first off, I guess to answer your question before I get into my criticisms, it's whatever. It's perfectly fine. Nothing's wrong with protecting players. I, as someone who tries their hardest to advocate for minor leaguers whenever I can, I am happy Pedro Pajes was one of the players added. I think it's awesome. I think it's good for him. It gives him a clear line to a major league debut, and not everybody gets a major league debut. So I'm hopeful that throughout this process, this gives Pedro Pajes a chance to make a major league debut where he otherwise might not have. Of course, that means a lot of people are probably going to get hurt or traded or DFA'd or whatever, non-tendered rather, throughout the course of the process or whatever. But I just think I think that, and my complaint always is with the Cardinals, and maybe this is the plight of a draft and development team or a team that prides themselves on being draft and development, is that you always have a weird 40-man crunch. And I guess, look, Connor Thomas never got to be what he could have been. I always thought Connor Thomas would be a back end starter, somebody who ate some innings here and there, would swing back and forth, maybe get some important bullpen innings. It never happened. He kind of forced them to rush him, coming out of the lost 2020 minor league season, and he was really impressive and really promising and had a great AFL last year, and it just never worked out. But I guess that is just the symptom of what we deal with a lot of times when we keep an eye on the Cardinals 40 man and how they manage it, where it seems like it's more of a crapshoot, a roulette wheel of who's going on and who's coming off. Even now, following their worst season since the 90s, and roster what I would categorize as, I say 25%, but realistically 15% worthless, 15% of players who don't really have a major league future, that are still on this roster, where there's a chance that other people might get selected in the Rule 5, even though I don't think they will, that probably are just as deserving of a spot, or maybe even more cautiously the Cardinals would be in a very smart position to hold on to some of these players, or be a little bit more cautious with them, while other guys like Michael Ciani is still on the roster. So that's all of that is a ramble to just say that, yeah, good for those guys. I'm glad they're on the 40. I'm glad that gives them a clear cut chance at the major leagues. But just like we learned with Connor Thomas over the years, it doesn't guarantee it if you're not effective or good. And there's still questions out there about what the hell's going on with the 40 man.
Yeah, and I
I was
think
just, oh,
obviously
go ahead, Kate.
Robersa and Kloffenstein, even if maybe they wouldn't have been picked up, I don't think they would have been picked up, honestly. And if they would have, they probably would have come back at some point when they were either not performing or whatever happens there. But Pajes was the one that surprised me, and I think everybody, because he was Rule 5 eligible, I believe, last year,
Yeah.
and no one selected him. And that's when he had spent time in AAA. This year he didn't spend time in AAA. But does this mean, a lot of people, obviously you get the speculation of, oh, what's this mean for Herrera? What's this mean for Kisner, in terms of their future plans with not tendering Kisner, which I don't believe is going to happen, and trading Herrera, which could happen, but who knows? Do you think that means anything? Because I personally don't really think it means anything.
No, I think it's just like I don't view decisions in a vacuum. I don't think one thing always leads to another. I do think you keep things in mind when you make decisions, especially with how valuable a 40-man spot is. I don't think that this is writing on the wall that Kiz is going to get non-tendered. I don't think it's writing on the wall that Ivan Herrera is going to get traded. I think what it clearly is insurance for a player that is with a player rather, and Pedro Pajes that does have skills that might be able to translate to insurance qualities at the major league level. His bat's kind of interesting. I think his bat is a little underrated, oddly enough. I think his defense is a bit overrated, but I think his bat is a little underrated. So he is kind of averaged out a little bit there. I just think that worst case scenario, a team takes Pedro Pajes, right? Say that you don't non-tender, or say that you do. You think Pedro Pajes is gonna get through the Rule 5 without being drafted, and then all of a sudden you have DFA'd Andrew Kisner, or you have traded Ivan Herrera, and then Pedro ends up getting selected, and then your backup catcher options are Nick Raposo, who isn't really even a catcher, can be but sort of isn't. You have these huge question marks after them, and then you're back to clawing away for a Heineman or a Barrera, or and that's not a position you want to be in. So I do think I have my issues with the 40 man. Having four catchers on the 40 man isn't always the smartest thing to do. What it does is it gives them insurance in case along the lines they make a move, more so than the direct move that would be made in a non-tender or a trade.
Yeah.
And also keep
I
in mind,
was just
I was going to say,
I
keep
was
in
just
mind,
totally sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, that Wilson Contreras is a trash catcher too, and as bad as Andrew Kisner is, he's better. So just keep
Yeah,
that in mind too when we're talking about catchers.
I've seen you saying that a lot, and that's a popular opinion among the Cardinals. By the way, we've kind of seen that they also believe that to be the case. Do you think that's more of his skills on the field, or it's more of preparation along with game calling and calling pitches that Montgomery doesn't throw allegedly?
Nah,
But so, what do you think that? Do you think it's the mental part of the game, or do you think it's just everything?
I think catching's hard. I do. I think catching
That's
is
true.
really freaking hard. And I think it's easier to be a trash catcher than it is to be an average catcher. And it's just that simple. It's just like with the dialogue that's going on about Andrew Kisner. He is a negative F war player. And it's easy to see how so many players could, and we're going to emphasize the word could, put up that offensive production and that defensive production. It's easy to see how it could happen. But you know what? It doesn't happen a lot, and it doesn't happen a lot as frequently as people think it does, and especially with catchers, especially at the major league level. So that's why, sure, you could say bring in a Tyler Heineman, or bring in whoever, bring in Tres Barrera at the league minimum 850 or whatever it is for a veteran, or bring in or have Pedro Pajes as the third string, or whatever. There's a certainty that you're buying at what is being predicted at a 1.85 arb number, million arbitration number. And sure, the certainty isn't, Wilson Contreras when Contreras is at his best, or Yadier Molina when Molina is at his best. Sure, it's not that, but you know what? It's also probably on the same line as Carson Kelly, and Carson Kelly's getting 3.5 from Detroit next year. So it's like you're with catching, because of how difficult it is to catch at the major league level, and to show that you can catch at the major league level, even at a below average level. It's worth it to have a little bit of certainty, even if the certainty isn't exciting or high level. That certainty is what you're paying for at that. So it would make sense that you would hold on to that. As far as it goes with Contreras, I don't know. Look, I know when I watch him, I know that he cost the Cardinals games. I know that he cost relievers runs. You can watch and find out. I just don't think that I think that it's really hard to be a major league catcher at a high quality on a day in and day out basis. And I think that you can lose it really quick too. I also think that you can get it back a little bit. And we're going to find that out about Contreras. He was asked to fill an offensive role that the Cardinals didn't have. And maybe that led into how he prepared in the offseason. Maybe that was it. Maybe an offseason of correcting that will allow him, and familiarity with the organization will allow him to focus his efforts and his energy in the direction that the Cardinals want him to and that he needs to. I wouldn't doubt that. He just needs to be slightly below average or average, and he's well worth his cost because of how hard it is to be a catcher at the major league level.
And to add to your point, I think it's equally as difficult, or not equally. I think it's even more difficult to be a quality defensive catcher and a quality offensive catcher. I mean, you can look around the league and you can count them on one hand. To be honest, I mean, you might not even need all five fingers. Like you might not even need. We saw Sean Murphy in the second half have literally a historic low, like not historic, that's the wrong word, but a very low offensive production to where he wasn't even playing in a couple of the postseason games. They were going with Travis d'Arnaud. With
and he still got nominated for a Silver Slugger even with all those struggles in the second half.
Right. He had such an elite first half, but I think as pitching staffs change and as you bring in guys and there's injuries and then there's rotation shakeups and bullpen shakeups, I just think you're spending most of your time instead of in the cage, you're spending your time with those guys. I mean, even if you are a mediocre defensive catcher, you're still spending. It's so difficult to see, and we saw Yachty that last 2 years really struggle offensively. Obviously, age had there's a lot of factors there, but to add to your point of catching being really fucking hard, then also being an elite hitter and elite. I mean, like I said, you can name maybe three. I mean, so that adds to it.
Especially doing all of that while being blamed for the entire first month of the season.
And being new.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it was just a mess. It was a mess.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Think about how often over these years, to kind of get back into the catcher talk a little bit, but think about how often over these years, as people talk about replacing Andrew Knizner, how often have we said, oh, that he can be Yachty's backup, and all of them failed. Eric Fryer did it well for 3 months one year, and they were all terrible at being the level that Andrew Knizner is. And think about how many other NL Central teams we've had that have come through where the catcher on the opposite team ideally would have been Andrew Knizner. And I think, this isn't, for me, the conversation we're having isn't about Andrew Knizner, although I keep bringing him up. It's about just how hard it is to be a catcher at the major league level, even in a backup capacity, on a full season basis.
Yeah, I did not see shots at Matt Wieters. Did not have that on my bingo card for the podcast, but I'm here for it.
Look, I'll take shots at anyone. Let's go.
Oh, Caleb, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say Tony Cruz homered off Mad Bum in a playoff game. He did.
All right,
so
I stand corrected.
And then later that game, Michael Wacha was in there for no apparent reason. But that's a difference. That's a story for a different time.
Yeah, no wonder I didn't remember that. I completely blocked that out. The only way I've been able to be sane since 2014 is to pretend like that never happened.
Before we move on, Kyle, I did want to let you know I brought out the old Bullet Rye in your honor tonight, knowing that you were going to be on here. So awesome. Cheers to you. Cheers to you.
Cheers. I am drinking. Cheers. I am drinking something a little different. I've been into these Cutwater drinks. They're drinks. And at first I hated them all, but I keep drinking them because I've got a problem. And I'm drinking the Peppermint White Russian. Was what I'm. I think it's the Peppermint White Russian Mudslide or something like that. Things that if you just put enough words together, it sounds delicious.
You should have showed up in a robe, like the dude. You should have just come in full character and gone right with it there.
Yeah, I know I ruined it, but
no. Yeah. Well, cheers, dude.
Cheers to you guys. Caleb, what are you drinking? Is it a drink from a gas station or something?
No, it's actually from my Keurig. Thanks, but I made a coffee before this. I was getting tired. I had too much work I did today with my classes. I was about to fall asleep. I know we said there were actual news today, and there was, but I mean it's off season, so we're going to get into speculation. That's just what it is. What are you making of all of this? I mean, obviously, there's all this skepticism out there that a lot of it's unfounded. Some of it is, whatever. What do you make of this offseason for the Cardinals? Do they need to get a number one pitcher in your opinion, or do they just need to get 2 number 2s? What's your view on that?
I think that they're bad, and I think that they just need to get better. And on a very generic way. And look,
nailed it.
What, Mike? I'm sorry.
I said you nailed it. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. You nailed it.
No. You know me, I rant and rant. I would appreciate if you guys stepped on me more and stopped me from making a fool of myself by saying 7,000 words and consecutively. So, Here's what I think is I think if the Cardinals want to be a Series contender, they need three of the top five guys on the market. But also I don't think that you can become a World Series contender in an offseason. I think that that happens gradually over a year. I think that the Cardinals could put themselves in a really good position by getting three pitchers that can eat innings and be reliable eating innings, whatever that means. That gets them to the All-Star break and the trade deadline, and make adjustments to what they need then. I think that they're the worst thing that could possibly happen, and I think historically in the off season, this proves out. But I think the worst thing that they could happen is think that they're in a position where they have to react, right? Because every time that they have to react, they mess up. We need an outfielder. We need him desperately. Who's a perfect fit? Dexter Fowler. Who is all right? All right. Our outfield sucks. We've got all this pitching in the organization. We don't want to trade any of the major league level ready pitchers, so we're not going to trade Dakota Hudson or Luke Weaver. Jack Flaherty's amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to trade the arms that we don't feel as comfortable about because we're not evaluating them right, for Marcell Ozuna, even though Ozuna's had kind of a up and down year. But we have to do this because our lineup sucks, right? And down the list and down the list. Mike Leake, it's all the same story. We're down a left-handed reliever. We need the best left-handed reliever on the market. We're going to go get Brett Cecil. The best catcher on the market, we don't have to give assets for Wilson Contreras. Let's go get him. There's urgency here. We feel the urgency. We're going to show the fans that we're acting in the name of urgency to address our major issues with what's best available, instead of maybe doing a little bit of homework, sticking to their guns, because there's been some talk about how they adjust based on like meeting players. Stick to your guns and go for what works for you. So that learning all of that is just to say, learning from their past mistakes over the last couple of years in the offseason, and maybe not being so like wanting to leave the winter meetings in December with a piece that helps answer your question. Some of the questions you have, I think, as annoying as it's going to be for fans, I think being patient in this particular aggressive market, unless you're going to jump the market, again, there's the caveat, unless you're going to jump the market, I think just getting players that are reliable, pitchers that are reliable without thinning out your stock of position players currently at the major league level that you're going to need to be competitive next year. So basically everybody on the 26 man that isn't Richie Palacios, because he, as fun as he is, he doesn't matter. Jose Fermin, as fun as he is, which he isn't, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's not. He's not.
Yeah, fun. Exactly. But like specifically anybody other than Carlson and O'Neill. I think Edman is kind of on the precipice there. I think not thinning out your major league level caliber hitters to address the pitching, I think that's key. And I think that getting caught up in the Nola, Snell, Yamamoto of it all ends up losing a little bit of the headliner, which is the Cardinals are trash when the defense is trash, regardless of who the pitchers are. And defense was trash last year all over the diamond. And really what you need are reliable pitchers. You need reliable pitchers. You don't necessarily need high end, because then you don't have to rely on Adam Wainwright, 40-year-old Adam Wainwright. You don't have to rely on Jack Flaherty, whatever that is. If they would have had three Jordan Montgomerys last year, the Jordan Montgomery who pitched for the St. Louis Cardinals, they probably still would have been bad because defense was trash and the offense was pretty inconsistent. But if you end up with three Jordan Montgomerys who were St. Louis Cardinals during Montgomery's Cardinal tenure, you're probably at least 10 games above where you were. So all of that is just to say that, like, I think to be contenders, they need top of the rotation pitchers, obviously. I think that all of the pitchers are traps on this particular market. So I think what they really need is to just address their needs however they think they need to address their needs without extending too far outside of who they are. And don't be aggressive, because when they're aggressive, they do and make terrible decisions.
Yeah, I think all those are fair. But hold on, sorry, Harla. I think all those are fair, but I don't see any way they do anything you just said.
Mm-hmm.
They're going, because here's what's going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen, at least. Yamamoto's going to go to whoever gives him $300 million when he hasn't set foot on a major league mound. I was on board the Yamamoto train after what I've seen with Jeff Passan's article about him, 200 being the starting point. I might be jumping off the train because I don't think the Cardinals have a chance, regardless of how much Lars Nootbaar's mom loves Yamamoto's mom. But And then what happens is they say, oh, shit, Aaron Nola, here's 200 for 7 years. And then we get Aaron Nola, and I like Aaron Nola. And honestly, if they signed him, I would be pretty excited. I think that'd be a really good move because he'd be the best pitcher they've had since 2019 Flaherty by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
But the odds of that contract working out in 7 years, looking back and saying, good contract, not very high, I don't think.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I'm one of these people who almost wonders if you can find 3 pitchers that you only have to sign for like 2 years, if that's your best bet. And I know it's not what the fans want to hear. I know the line that we all feel in our hearts is you have to come away with one of the top available free agent starters, or Glasnow or Cease, right? Because Bieber doesn't really fit that anymore, and Glasnow and Cease are just the too easy to go to, unless you're going to try to mine what's ever going on in the Padres as as they try to claw out of their debt. But I don't necessarily know if that does make them that much better. I think the changes to make themselves better should have happened a couple of years ago, and it should have happened internally, and an adjustment in how they raise their pitchers, how they groom their pitchers, how they help develop those pitchers. And I think that we would be reaping the rewards of that now, but we're not. Instead, we're trying to pivot and sign the most volatile position in baseball, the catching position being the most difficult. The most volatile, of course, is pitching. And all of these guys, like I've had this conversation with other people about Yamamoto. People talk about Yamamoto, and he's young. Paying for youth is smart. It's really smart, but it's also really dangerous. I've heard people talk about, with Yamamoto, you're getting a young arm. Well, isn't every arm a ticking time bomb? Couldn't you make an argument that someone like Aaron Nola, who has gone as long as he has without having arm issues, is maybe more reliable to not have arm issues than somebody who's younger and just hasn't had them yet? I think personally, if I'm trying to not be analytical about it, I do think they need something like Aaron Nola. I do think Aaron Nola is perfect for what they want and what they're doing and how they do it and what they do. I do think that. I think even like a 7-year, $175 million contract for Nola. I think while that's too many years and too much money, it's not too many years and too much money in the market. But I just don't know how much better it makes him over, especially when they're going to budget themselves a 40 or $50 million. I don't know how much better that makes them when that only gives them a chance to get 2 starters, one potentially high-end starter, one mid-level starter, and then a swing person, when really they need 3 starters, and you could argue that they need 4 starters, even with my Matt Thompson slash as your 5th starter. You're going to need more. And I love Gordon Graceffo. Sem Robertson might be a major league pitcher at some point. Michael McGreevy might be a major league pitcher at some point. I don't know if you're going to put yourself in a winning position if you don't have depth, and they still don't have that depth, even with the guys that they have in the organization. So not only do you need the 3 starters you're talking about, you probably need additional depth on top of that. And we're already starting to back off of that to 2.5 starters. And the reason is because the Cardinals are dipping their toes into the high end of the pitching market. And when you dip your toes in the high end of the pitching market, it limits what you can do with the rest of your team, which of course says nothing for the issues that they have in the bullpen.
God damn it, Kyle. When I had you on here, I was fired up. And then you started bringing up Mike Leake, and you brought up Brett Cecil, and you brought up Dexter Fowler. And now you're using all of this logic, which is exactly correct. And it's something that Caleb and I have been talking about all the time. I was just hoping you were coming in saying they're going to sign Yamamoto, they're going to sign Nola, they're going to sign Sonny Gray, and it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. That's what I was expecting from you tonight, bro.
I will say that I'd be willing to bet, based solely on how they have reacted to the off seasons in the last couple of years, especially how they react at the winter meetings, where it's almost like they don't want to leave there empty-handed.
That's literally what he said last year. That's literally word for word what he said last year. He said, we're not leaving here without a catcher. Great, Mo. There goes your leverage. That a boy.
Exactly. That I do think they will overspend for one of those pitchers. I do. I personally believe Aaron Nola is perfect for them. I just, not even like perfect for the Cardinals on the team. I'm talking about as perfect for the Cardinals as a mission statement more than anything. And I do think that they will go above and beyond for Aaron Nola. It seems so perfect. It just seems like the perfect little marriage. Also you have to ask yourself about that second round pick, how they view also, overpaying for Sonny Gray and having to give up a second round pick. Like there's a big question there for me. And, Yamamoto comes with questions. The least, even with some of the struggles that he's had over the last couple of years, Aaron Nola is like the one with the least amount of questions when you step back and watch, especially with what the Cardinals' MO is as a team and as an organization. So I do think that if he makes it to the end of the winter meetings, I do think the Cardinals will go head and shoulders over where they feel comfortable to get Aaron Nola. So I do think they will come away with one of those pitchers. Now the question becomes, say Aaron Nola just decides he doesn't want to leave Philly. Philly gives him a deal he feels comfortable with. And, same thing happens with Sonny Gray in Minnesota or whatever ends up happening. Because I know right now there's a lot of talk about Sonny Gray going to Atlanta. But, what happens if they're priced out of Yamamoto, priced out of Snell, have put all of their resources into Nola, and Nola decides to go to Pittsburgh or go back to Philly? And what happens then? That's what becomes really interesting.
They're screwed. Like, honestly, they're screwed because the Cardinals aren't good at reacting to things they don't expect. They're horrible at it. They wanted Adam Eaton. They really wanted Adam Eaton. The Nationals said, here's Lucas Giolito. They got a World Series out of it, but that trade still to me is stupid. And then the Cardinals said, oh shit, here's Dexter Fowler. He could play center field and bat leadoff, right? And then they didn't get Bryce Harper because they had Dexter Fowler. It was one big mess, and it continued for years.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this: it's kind of a two-parter on that. One, do you kind of see this, like, as a New Orleans Saints fan living down here? Caleb and I are like, the Saints are legitimately the Cardinals of football right now, right? You've got some aging veterans who are still really playing well. You've got a few young guys who also a lot of upside, and then you've got just a bunch of guys, right? And then you've got an organization who is sort of also stuck in, we're going to compete. That doesn't mean we're going to compete for a Super Bowl. We're going to compete for a division title, but we're not, like, they're not the Eagles, they're not the 49, whatever, right? They're not going to compete for. I kind of view the Cardinals as that of the National League. Like, you could compete for an NL Central. Like, do you sort of see this as maybe it's time for a complete organizational shift at this time? I know the fans would hate it. I understand all of that. But, I'm an Aaron Nola guy. He's like, I'm a huge fan of his. But you're right. I mean, giving him a 7-year deal, now you're just going to almost be stuck in that middle ground. It feels like, whether you extend Goldie or you don't. You've got Arenado's contract sitting there. You got Wilson Contreras' contract. And you've got all these young guys ready to kind of blossom. It just feels like we're just kind of stuck in quicksand, which, by the way, I was told as a kid was going to really impact my life way more than it ever has. So, that's all I know.
I think right now, okay, so a year ago, we're just one off season ago, we were talking about what the Cardinals needed to do to become a World Series contender, right? And now we're talking about a potential, like, rebuild, right? The emphasis of this particular question is a rebuild kind of needed, with some of their older, aging veterans kind of aging out of their prime. And I think one thing that I've learned, and this applies to myself, not just Cardinal fans in general, and I'm not necessarily saying this about either of you, but we lose poorly. Cardinal fans, we've been so lucky, and this isn't about the fandom being spoiled. I mean that. I'm not trying to say that the fans are spoiled, but I've learned in these last couple months, and specifically in these last couple weeks, that we don't know what losing looks like. And we don't necessarily know, because of that, and we've been fortunate because of that, we don't know what it takes to get good again. Or how we don't really know how far off from being good again we are. And I don't think the Cardinals front office does. They've never been in that position either. So if we don't as fans, they probably don't as a front office either. So I guess that's just the preface to say that I don't know if they're at that point, right? I'm one of these, I guess, Goldie apologists, Paul Goldschmidt apologists, where I don't think that he's going to, like, age less gracefully than he's already aged. And I don't necessarily think, my concerns about Nolan Arenado moving forward aside, I don't necessarily think that the offense is poised for any type of fallback. I think you could probably argue that the offense is only going to get better. If Lars Nootbaar stays healthy, if Brendan Donovan stays healthy, if Nolan Gorman can sort out his 3 months of being terrible and 3 months of being elite trend that he's kind of been on. I think that with your anchors on your corners, and Wilson Contreras, the DH center, the DH catcher. I mean, kind of as your veteran anchors. I do think that you have the foundation for a potential quick rebound, but you have to be careful about the decisions you make here. And I don't necessarily think that as someone who understands to a degree how difficult it is to manage the payroll of a major league team with revenue, where I don't think a lot of fans quite fully understand that. I don't at all. But I think that the decisions that they make, and this is why I've been so leery about like trading for anybody other than Glass now, uh, any pitcher that has like control for years, is they have to be smart about the decisions they make with their position players. Because if they start trading off their position players, even I have my concerns about Nolan Gorman, but even Nolan Gorman, even Tommy Edman, I think that's where in a year from now we'll be having a real conversation about this team selling and this team needing a rebuild. Like right now, it's a more realized version of the conversation we've been having for a couple years as they languished around 500 until August, and then put together a winning streak that sent them to playoff or fringe playoff or above 500 team. I think that now we're feeling some of those repercussions, but I don't necessarily think that we're at a real point where that's actually reasonable to do, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But with a couple wrong decisions, and not even spending money decisions, just in how you work the personnel you have, I think a year from now that will be the most likely option than the opposite, which is adding to a roster to try to get to the next level.
What about at that front office level? Like, and Mo, by the way, like I'm not a Mo Bagsher. What he has done in his tenure here in St. Louis. I mean, we're talking about we're third in baseball in wins, I believe, under most. Yeah. Like he has done a lot of incredible things. We've gone to World Series, we've gone to NL championships. But do you think it's almost good to bring in, like Caleb and I talked about Chaim Bloom last time. Do you think it's almost good to bring in a voice that's out? Like everybody wants the Cardinal way, and if they played for the Cardinals, they want them back immediately once they can have, like, we need them back on our, and I love that, but I also don't love that. Do you think maybe it's good for a fresh voice to come in who has not been here and seen nothing but winning?
Tonight, Skip Schumacher just won Manager of the Year. And while we view Skip Schumacher as a St. Louis Cardinal, Skip Schumacher, the coach, is a San Diego Padre, right?
Yep.
And I was thinking about that. So last year was the Cardinals' most successful season since 2015, maybe 2017, I guess. Right? They weren't a wild card team. They were a division champion. Maybe what, 2019? Well, one of those years. So, and what did they have, right? They had an assistant pitching coach from Duke, Mike Maddox, who is from the 1800s.
World Series champ Mike Maddox.
That's right. That's right. World Series champ Mike Maddox. And then, even on the hitting side, you brought Turner Ward in from a different organization, and you had Jeff Albert, who came from a different organization. And just on the coaching staff there, with Ali Marmol, you had a ton of success. I think that they do. I think that they need as much, external, which, again, not to diss on Joe McEwing, but Joe McEwing has never really been a part of anything successful as a coach. So that's all just to say, like, I do think it's important that they bring in outside voices. I don't necessarily know if, like, as a consultant role is the best, or something a little bit more practical is the best. But I think that what they need is, if they're going to bring in somebody like Chaim Bloom or Kim Na or somebody like that, I think you bring him in to be an investigative journalist. You don't bring him in to be a consultant. Their job, you pay them, you hire them to come in and be the opposition research, to be the ones who find the holes in the organization. If you're just bringing in to have a consultant, somebody to bounce ideas off of, that's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. If you want them to give a quick appraisal of the organization, then that's a waste of time and a waste of resources too. Everybody's doing that with your organization. Just look at Prospects Live and Baseball America and ESPN. Just they're doing it for free for you. If you're going to bring somebody in and spend that time and that resource, they should be an investigative journalist and they should be poking holes in everything that you're doing. You should be paying them to find your weak spots. And if you're not doing that, then I think it's a waste of time and a waste of resources. All you're The opposite of that is you're just trying to incorporate somebody from the outside into your group think. And I've been on Pad the other night. I was quick to call the Cardinals like a groupthink organization, and that's not fair. That is definitely not fair. I know for a fact Michael Gersh is working his ass off behind the scenes to make this as positive of a offseason for the St. Louis Cardinals as possible. I know that that's not just with Gersh; it's with Flores, it's with the whole group, Mozeliak, Rodriguez, all of them. They're all working their ass off to make this a successful offseason. But if you're just trying to bring somebody else in to be a consultant, are you really asking them to consult? Or what are you trying to do with that role? Because the purpose of the role is more important than the role itself, in my opinion.
I agree, and I also think going back a second to when you guys were talking about the rebuilding, which I'm fully on board with you. I think they're very fortunate to be where they are, considering how poorly they've developed pitching. If Donovan and Nootbaar weren't diamonds in the roughs, where the hell would they be right now?
Yeah.
Where would they be? They'd be in a very, very different spot. They wouldn't have the offense they have. Like, they've been very fortunate, one, to have great scouts. Like, that's props to them. But for those guys to have developed the way they have, I think rebuilding, one, I think it'd be a disservice to the team, to the fan base, because I don't think they need to do that. Yeah. And I also think it would I can't even imagine them doing that. Like, they would have to go like 50 and 112 next year. And then they'd be like, oh, maybe we do have to tear this thing down. Like, I don't think that's at all what they're even thinking about doing. But the worry is they know they're not going to do that. So that means they also know that they have to turn this thing around quickly, which means they know they have to sign somebody expensive, which also means they better choose the right person. I don't even care who it is. Whoever they choose better freaking work out. It has to, or they're screwed.
That's why I think Aaron Nola fits them perfectly, because he's like the one guy on the market where, say, in 2 years he's trash or he's hurt or he doesn't make much out of his 7-year contract or 8-year contract or whatever it ends up being. I think he's the one guy that you can say, well, we went with the most sure of the free agents on the market and we brought him in. Even with Sonny Gray, like there's questions there. With Yamamoto, there's questions. That'll be the one blowback they'll get. I do think that they're in on Yamamoto, maybe more than any of us realize, but that's just total speculation. It's not fair.
I agree with you on that too. There's too much smoke around it, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that they'll ever be able to match whatever kind of money comes out of the East Coast. It's just a matter of where he wants to go at that point, because he'll make that decision. But yeah, I think that Nola makes all the sense for them, because he is protection. The answer to it didn't work out is, well, it was the smart move to make at the time. It was the right move to make at the time, where maybe these other guys that are at the top of the free agent market specifically, not the trade market, but the free agent market specifically, all have questions that are bigger than the questions that Aaron Nola has.
Yeah, and I also think Aaron Nola is one of those guys I could just see coming to the Cardinals and being better for no reason at all. That's kind of what I feel like happened to Jordan Montgomery. Like, he came here and he changed things through his fastball more, but everyone was kind of like, that's a bad idea. It's not that good. And then he was just better. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I think Aaron Nola could come here and then perform to where his FIP has been recently, because he's been a guy that's underperformed relative to his FIP, mainly because Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos play the outfield for the Phillies. But I do think Aaron Nola is like a perfect fit, and I've been saying that for months, that he seems like a Cardinal. Like, it seems like he should be on the Cardinals already. Uh-huh. He's a tall right-handed pitcher that I don't even know what his voice sounds like. He doesn't talk. Like, he seems perfect, I think.
Yeah. The less you know about the guy, the more he seems like, this guy's been in the spotlight for years and years, and I don't know anything about him. That's a St. Louis Cardinal, right? Does he sing for a Christian band out of Tennessee? Probably. If the answer is yes, then he's a St. Louis Cardinal.
He's a swamp boy, man. He's from down here, I think, in Louisiana. And here's what I do know, like, just being around guys from the LSU area down here, they have nothing but high praise for Aaron and Austin Nola. Like, absolute. Like, those two are like legends down here. So, that makes me want him down in St. Louis even more.
Yeah, that is the one thing that does come with him, is just how stand up of a human being he is. And of course, that is St. Louis Cardinals. We know that. And, so that's what I think. Nola just makes too much sense for them in every conceivable way. And he's also the kind of person that they would go out of their comfort zone to bring in the organization. And then you just hope that his arm holds up. But you're going to do that with whatever pitcher you bring in anyway. So, yeah, I do think that's the direction they go in.
I think it would be fascinating if there were two moves this offseason were Aaron Nola and Marcus Stroman, just because they couldn't be more different
Yeah.
people. And I
Yeah.
think I would love it. I think I would love the chaos that would bring to Twitter. Like Marcus, a lot of people don't want Marcus Stroman for various reasons. A lot of them fair, to
Yeah.
be quite fair. He's done some stupid things on Twitter, whatever. But I think it would be fascinating to watch Marcus Stroman pitch in a Cardinal uniform, just because I don't think it'd be like anything we've ever seen in our lives. I really don't, and I want to see it. I really do.
Oh, I'm on board for that. Give me all the chaos. Give me levels and levels of chaos. Give me chaos so much that it hurts on the inside. Like I want to feel the chaos, like somebody's giving it to me in places that I didn't want. Like I'm about it. You know what I mean? I just I don't think Stroman's their guy. Speculation, and I do want to differentiate speculation from reports. Mr. Gould reports. It says my internet connection is unstable, so I apologize. Mr. Gould reports. Miss Wu reports. Everybody else pretty well speculates, right? Nothing against some of the other beat writers locally. They just don't really get involved in it. But the national people, they speculate, and we know from the reporting. We know that they're in with Gray, Nola, and Yamamoto, and we also know that they're going to turn over every rock that they can to try to make the pitching staff better. So I think it's reasonable to expect that, even someone like Marcus Stroman, they'll probably, at the very least, do some exploring to see what that's about. So I think that's the most fascinating aspect of this offseason is I think they understand just how bad they are and how bad they were and how easy it is. And maybe not how easy it is, but how quickly they can turn it around if they do the right things. And I think really the most, aside from what's going to happen with the pitching, I think the next step is tell us what that coaching staff looks like. Not the Yadier Molina of it. I'm one of these people. I just don't care. It's whatever. The Yadier Molina of it, I don't care. But I think the other additions they bring onto the coaching staff, I think that's going to be important. On Pad, I went on this little rant about I just don't care about Jason Isringhausen. Like, if you bring Jason Isringhausen on, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't care about that. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't avoid that move. Be smarter. Go get some coaches that can actually coach, that can actually get some stuff out of you, other than teaching, other than evaluating poorly and teaching pitches to pitchers. Like, I want to see what the coaching staff change or additions look like. That's what I want to see, and I just don't care if Yadier Molina is one of them or not.
Now, earlier you talked about the defensive woes, like the trash. Like that was, I think you're being incredibly kind by just calling them trash. Like I really do. Do you think they saw enough of Mason Wynn to just go ahead and say that is our opening day shortstop? And where do you see this center field debacle like going? Like, and again, we're back to speculation, but that's kind of what I want to know. I kind of want to know what you think. I mean, do you think Mason Wynn they saw enough defensively that is an upgrade? And this is a three-parter. So the third part, what fucking explains the Nolan Arenado regression defensively to where he's not even in the Gold Glove conversation?
Well, I'm one of these douchebags who likes to always say kids are the reason.
Get off my lawn.
Whenever an athlete has kids, we joke around lately about daddy energy or and I'm the opposite. I think about how much energy that would take, and I think, Jesus, there's no way I could be a professional athlete and have a child. I can hardly be an adult and have a child. I can hardly be this child that I am and have a child, and I don't even have a child, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. But so no, I mean, all kidding aside, like, I wonder if it was just a wind down from the World Baseball Classic. I wonder, I don't know. I think maybe that back, again, speculation, not fair, but maybe that back is worse than any of us realize. Like, it wasn't just how bad he was defensively in the first half of the season. It was how bad offensively he was in the second half of the season. What was it? He went the last month and a half of his season without hitting a home run. Like, you want to talk about alarming. It's not just that defensive regression that he had, although he did get that back. He started to be old Arenado in the second half. Like, it came at the expense of his offense, his offensive power production, and that's wild to me. Like, it wasn't his season was so disjointed that I don't even know what to make of it. Maybe it was just such a fluke because of whatever he was going through, whatever that is. Maybe he could never get comfortable. Maybe he was just taking it easy towards the end of the year because he didn't want to get hurt and the Cardinals were shit. Same thing with O'Neill. Maybe that's what was going on with O'Neill too. But I don't know what to think of that. I don't know. I do know it was, it's funny, a second ago we were talking about Aaron Nola's FIP, and we mentioned Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber in the corners. Well, the Cardinals had two position players out there that were worse than those two on the most on most circumstances. And Jordan Walker made some positive steps. He has to continue to make huge strides, even though his OAA was better, was a positive towards the end of the year in those last couple months. He still was not good out there. I don't care what outs above average say. He was still diving around like a jackass. He was still misplaying balls off the wall. He was still taking bad routes. He needs to continue to get better. And I think, to answer your question about center field, I think ideally, in the ideal world, the Cardinals don't trade anybody other than O'Neill and Carlson this offseason that they have as penciled in as position players. I think your best bet at that point would be Tommy Edman gets the lion's share of center field starts against left-handed pitching, because he hits right-handed, and he hits right-handed pretty well, all things considered. And then, at that point, Nootbaar and Walker are your corner outfield. I feel pretty confident with that as a defensive lineman. And then, of course, the opposite of that is when a righty pitches, Nootbaar's in center. You probably have Burleson in left and Walker in right. And then that's where it gets a little dicey.
That's bad again. That's bad again.
It's bad again. It's bad again. But, again, then at that point, you're just hoping that these outfielders who haven't played much outfield in those positions have made strides, that they've put in the work this offseason to make those strides, to make up for some of their deficiencies. I believe Alec Burleson will. I believe Jordan Walker will. I believe Lars Nootbaar will, even in center, although I do think we've seen about as peak center field Lars Nootbaar as we're capable of seeing. So the question then to answer about Mason Wynn is, I think that in their minds, they've seen enough of him defensively to feel confident that the combo of Edman and Wynn will get them through hard times at short, when and how it's necessary, is what I think. I love Mason Wynn with all my heart. Great kid. He's going to be a major leaguer, and he's going to be a major leaguer for a long time. And I do think the Cardinals are probably banking on him being their everyday shortstop. But just like being a catcher at the major league level, being an everyday position player at the major league level is really tough, and it's not easy. And even to be the level of hitter that Tommy Edman is going to take work, and he'll put the work in and he'll get there eventually. It's just a matter of how long it'll take him to get there, and if the rest of that offense can hold the line while he works to get there. Now, I think the offense can. I think it's capable, even with whatever jerry rigged outfield setup they have. I just think that it's a matter of understanding what he is and being patient and letting him still work through being a shortstop every day for 150 games a year.
One of the things I'm curious about, because this has kind of been like an old man take for a long time, but then you saw the success of the Atlanta Braves when they ran out the same lineup every single day. A lot of that's because their players are so damn good. There's no question who's playing every day, who's going out there. But do you give any credence to the idea of maybe to start the year, you say our lineup is this? And if there's a lefty on the mound, so be it. We want to see what Nolan, Gorman, Donovan, and Nootbaar maybe can do against lefties on an everyday basis. And honestly, they don't really have that many great right-handed options in the outfield anyway, especially if Carlson and O'Neill are gone. Let's just leave these guys here for the first month, and maybe that's going to get them going. They're going to know where they're playing when they show up to the ballpark, unless there's an off day for rest. Like, they're going to know, instead of, Donovan's coming to the field and he has no clue where he's batting, where he's playing, if he's playing. I don't know how much credence to give that, but it is a thought I think that they should be having right now.
No, you're right. I do appreciate that, and I like that. I will say, just for clarification purposes, is they know the night before if they're playing the next day. Like that is right. Something that they know. But I don't know if everyone knows that. I know you guys know that, but it just gives me an opportunity to say it in case people aren't aware that usually, almost always, the night before, the lineup for the next day is posted and they know where they're playing. But even then, like, doing that every night, waiting for your game to end to see if you're going to play the next day, that weighs on you. And then all of a sudden, what does that do to your sleep patterns? And then we all know how sleep patterns affect how we perform our day job or our schooling. Um, what I think is, I think there's a way to do it, and I think that there's a way to augment it. Right? You just have to be smart about how you're doing it. And I'm one of these people that, you know, Tommy Edman ideally is your perfect utility player. Being smart about how you utilize Alec Burleson maximizes him. Uh, I just think you have to be smart about the personnel you have. I'm not saying that everything has to be a 100% platoon. Use the data available to you and communicate what your expectations are with those players. But I've been one of these people who says just don't even bat Nolan Gorman against lefties. Like you do it when the games don't matter. That's fine. Get him in there against if you have a chance to sweep or whatever, get him in. And he made solid progress last year against lefties. Although again, he went through the last month where he was trash against lefties because he was trash hitter, which happens to him because he's a streaky hitter. So I guess my point is if Gorman is riding streak, if he's streaking, then yeah, sure, play him every day. It doesn't matter. But if he's, what is it? It would have been he was good in March, April, got off to a good start in May, was terrible the rest of May, almost all the way through July, like a 70 WRC player or something like that. Like
He was like a slam dunk, gonna start the All-Star game to not even a question. He's not in the All-Star game. That's how
yeah,
quickly it turned.
yeah, get this guy out of the lineup. It wasn't even that. Like, and he did that again, coming back from the All-Star break, nursing a back issue, was in Fuego out of the break, and then was back to being that version of Nolan Gorman again. So all I'm saying is if Gorman's striking out 35% of the time and isn't hitting anybody, you got to be smarter than to keep running him out there. Give him a little break, let him figure stuff out in the cage. And once he gets in Fuego again, play him every day. Brendan Donovan, if you don't have the front of your lineup figured out outside of Brendan Donovan, then yeah, play Brendan Donovan every day. Now, to me, Brendan Donovan is more than an everyday player. He's a borderline all-star. But that's pointless. What he is a piece to be used to be maximized inside of your offensive scheme and your defensive scheme. If you're playing an offense that is outfield heavy, pop up heavy offense, yeah, you got to have him out there because in left field if you're going to have Walker in right and Newton center. You have to be smart. You have to know your opponent. You have to maximize your team against your opponent. But I think what they have is they have a lot of pieces that, while it would be great to pen them in every night, I don't think very many of them are actually pen players. You're hoping Lars Nootbaar is. He shows signs, but then he also doesn't. And you're hoping Jordan Walker is, and I believe he will be, just like I believe Lars Nootbaar will, but there's no guarantee. And I feel the same way about Brendan Donovan. And then, of course, you have Wilson Contreras and Goldschmidt and Arenado. So it's just a matter of like what you do with those other spare parts that aren't spare parts who you're going to rely on and how you figure it out. So I do think there's value to it, but I also think you need to be adjustable and you need to be smart about it because then you get into a situation where you've sat Dylan Carlson as your fifth outfielder for the first month of the season, basically, and you've hurt his value, you've hurt his confidence, and you haven't maximized your 26-man roster.
Do you think there's any thought internally, or should there be, of potentially looking at a guy like Kevin Kiermaier to come in for 1 year to bridge the gap to Victor Scott? Or do you think they're not even looking at any offense/defense to bring in? They're simply focused 100% on starting pitching and the bullpen. Or do you think that there's anything potentially to look at that to stabilize that defense in center field? Maybe have that little split between Wynn and Edman at short, if you will, and then bridge that gap to get Victor Scott potentially here in 2025?
I believe that they're doing everything they can to make this a competitive team next year. But I do think that the option that they have internally are probably what they would prefer over something from the outside, right? Like I bet that they don't view much of a difference between Richie Palacios and Kevin Kiermaier, as an all around, when you're including how much a contract costs, all of that. Like when it all comes down to it, does it just make more sense to have Tommy Edman and Richie Palacios than Kevin Kiermaier or Harrison Bader? trying to be smart with how they allocate their funds. So I do think, you know, I can be as critical as I can be supportive of the front office, and I firmly believe that they're doing everything that they possibly can to make this team as competitive as possible next year. I don't. I would suspect that to that particular question, that the answer is no right now, other than keeping an eye on the market, and then if they get to a position where maybe they think that they found a taker for Tommy Edman, that's some just like Dylan Cease or whoever it ends up being, where they can't say no to that deal, then I would 100% suspect that that's exactly what they'll do. They'll pivot in that direction. The one thing I will tell people is when you look at the Cardinals organization, they don't have shortstops. You're hoping Thomas Sajaci can become an average or a serviceable major league shortstop. But other than Edman and Wynn and whatever Jose Fermin is exactly, they don't have major league level shortstops. Nothing that even comes close to resembling it. So they need to be really careful about specifically how they handle Tommy Edman, because Tommy Edman, as average as he is, as much of a liability as he is, as at the plate, as weak as his contact is, he provides three things that the Cardinals don't have: stability in short, stability at short, stability in center, and also just the general ability to not make mistakes. The year after the Cardinals made mistakes everywhere, the only guy who didn't do it regularly, other than Brendan Donovan, was Tommy Edman.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a Tommy supporter. The only way I would say, yeah, you might have to do it is obviously Cease. Like, if they're like, hey, we'll give you Dylan Cease and you have to give us Gorman, Nootbaar, or Donovan, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like, who else? Who do you want? Who do you want? Because obviously within reason, not Walker. But Glasnow is a guy that you've been all over. He's a guy that I've been daydreaming about for a year and a half. Just not because of how good he looks, but because of how because of the nasty shit that comes out of his right arm. Because it's just he's Jacob DeGrom. Like, he is. If he's healthy for a full year, it would not surprise me if he puts up a Jacob DeGrom-esque year. That wouldn't shock me at all. So I don't know what he's worth, though. Like, what is his value on the trade market? He's getting paid probably over market value, because if he was a free agent, I don't think he's getting $25 million a year. No way, I don't think so. So what is he worth in a trade? Do you think he gets 25 really with his injury concerns?
I do. You might. I don't. I do. God, I really do. Look, so it was funny. Somebody said something on Twitter today, and they're like, "All you can do is bank on 20 starts at Tyler Glasnow." And in my mind, I was like, for $25 million, yeah, I'll give me those 20 starts. Give me those 120 innings. Like, you know, maybe again, I am a psychopath. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm out of my mind. I try not to be, but here I am again with crazy eyes and ranting like a lunatic. Yes, he is absolutely worth 125, even with the 100 innings, the 120 innings. I heard somebody say something about big game pitching. Whatever. Look, he is a man. He is a monster. Like you were saying, he's attractive as the Dickens. Looks like Cillian Murphy. We've all seen it, but he is special. That arm is special. And sure, he might only throw 60 innings. He might only throw 120 innings. But a team is going to give him $25 million next year to get those innings. And those innings are going to be better than probably any 140 or 160 innings that you're going to get with somebody else, right? Like, that's where the depth comes in, where hopefully you have the depth to be able to pick up those innings. But look, let's not pretend like the Cardinals have had 120 innings, good pitched innings in the last couple of years out of the top of their rotation. They haven't. Like, Jose Quintana and Miles Michaelis and Gimpy Adam Wainwright got them through last year. I'll take the 120 innings out of Tyler Glasnow over any of those innings. And Miles Michaelis was about as effective as you could possibly hope for him to be in 2022. Jose Quintana, after being traded to the Cardinals, was about as effective as a pitcher could be. Jordan Montgomery last year was about as effective throughout a full season as he's capable of being, even though people are going to pay him to be more than that. Like, it's not going to happen. This is as good as he's going to get. Like, he's like, it's a huge spot where he's at right now, and he's probably going to be worth whatever contract he gets. But like, let's not pretend like those 120 innings grow on trees. And sure, when it comes to playoff time, maybe he won't be available, and that is a big thing, right? But I mean, come on, like, that is a monster there. And as far as what it's going to take to get him, my assumption is, just like I put in a message today, that every one of these guys, the way, if you follow the breadcrumbs, if you listen to every pundit, it's going to cost more than not only what you're comfortable with, it's probably going to cost more than what you're not comfortable with, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he is so good. Like I feel like some people they're like, no, stay away from Glass now. And if it's like if they're asking for Nolan Gorman or Donovan, that's not worth 1 year of any pitcher, really, to be frank. But if it's reasonable, like he is legitimately a top 5 pitcher in baseball when he's on the field. And if you get him and Nola healthy in a playoff run, you can win the World Series. Like that could happen. So I love Tyler Glass now, and I still dream of him being a Cardinal, even though it probably won't happen.
Both of you guys probably remember this. Like, do you remember leading up to the Arenado to St. Louis, how often there was like an undercurrent, not only of Cardinal fans, but of baseball fans that talked about how overrated Nolan Arenado was. And part of that came from Colorado, right? Well, I hypothesize a little bit. And granted, Tampa has been in playoff races where the Rockies really never were. But my hypothesis is that every pitcher that isn't like Garrett Cole is going to end up being thought of as overrated or not worth the price tag, unless they're in some type of major playoff race like Aaron Nola is, and even Nola comes from Philly, so it's kind of splitting hairs there. But yeah, that's just my thought. Like to me, in a lot of ways, Glasnow, he's just so talented, right? And again, that at least with Arenado was durable. So that's a whole part of the conversation that it isn't there with Glasnow. But I think there's a parallel to be drawn there where Arenado was extremely talented. One of the best players in baseball, one of the best position players in baseball, who people were writing off for whatever dumb reason they were, just because they hadn't seen him a lot, even Cardinal fans. And I feel like that's kind of happening with Glass now.
Yeah, I agree. You got anything, Dad?
Mike, how do you feel about Glass now?
If we ended up with Tyler Glasnow and Aaron Nola, my life is complete. I mean, I'm almost 50, and if that happens by my 50th birthday in February, like that is literally all I could. I'm not. I say it jokingly. I mean, I've been married 26 years. I hope I'm married another 26. It's been incredible. I have 3 kids. That's the pinnacle of my life. Like nothing will get better than that. But 1A or 1B would be Tyler Glasnow and Aaron Nola in our rotation come opening day, but also in our rotation, like Caleb said, come October. Like I don't even have word. Like if either of those happen and either of those happen, I'm giddy. Both of those happen, I am screaming to the mountaintops that like I understand and I've seen you post about it, and I've seen a lot of people post about it. You could fill in the blank with any pitcher you want. And Cardinal fans will say, well, he's injured. Like, yes, that is what a starting pitcher is. We just saw what DeGrom got in Texas. He pitched like 4 games and they won the World Series. Like, we know that you're going to sign a guy that's going to be an injury concern. But if we ended up with Glasnow, who I agree with Caleb, I think when healthy, top 5 pitcher in baseball. And then you had Aaron Nola right after that. I don't think I've ever seen that in my lifetime from a Cardinals pitching staff. Like,
well, you
I
had
don't think
Chris
I've ever
Carpenter
seen that.
and Adam Wainwright in their primes.
I think, I mean,
says the guy who compared Adam Wainwright to Clayton Kershaw last time.
Oh, here we go. I knew it was coming out. I knew
here we go.
I will clarify that one day. That was not what I meant, but we'll move on. But obviously Carpenter.
That's not what I heard.
I still think Glasnow, Nola. Like we've seen Nola on the big stage, and yes, he's had some hiccups in the regular season, and yes, he's had some hiccups at times in postseason. Everybody does. Like that's what you see today in 2023 baseball. Like that happens. Guys are going to hit home runs. That happens. But if we had Glasnow and Nola, I would take my chances with our offense, our young offense, and our veterans against any team in the National League.
Yeah, they could go on a run with that for sure. Like that's the thing too. And Kyle, I think we talked about this on Twitter, that everyone was going crazy. Like we need an ace. And while I agree, that's ideal, whatever the term of an ace is. But if you get Aaron Nola, that's an ideal way for the offseason to go, is to have Aaron Nola and someone that's a tier below him in your rotation. That's the way I would want it to go if I were drawing it up. But people are like, you can't win without an ace. Well, did anyone watch Texas? Because Jordan Montgomery was on our team, and we did not think he was an ace. Nathan Eovaldi was available to be signed by our team, and no one said, go sign that ace. And those two both pitched like aces. Jordan Montgomery made the best hitter on the earth, and Yordan Alvarez looked like an infant 4 times, and he is not an ace. So I want an ace, but you don't need one. You need people that pitch like aces.
Well, exactly. And I mean, look at their counterpart in the World Series, Arizona. Like Zach Gallen has the potential to be an ace. He's certainly a number one type pitcher, but he was terrible in the playoffs. They did not
Mm-hmm.
get quote unquote ace or front of the rotation level production out of Zach Gallen in the playoffs. Merrill Kelly did, but traditionally you wouldn't call Merrill Kelly even a top of the rotation pitcher, right? He's a 2-3 is basically what he is. Who
He's Miles
pitched
Michaelis. He's Miles
well,
Michaelis.
if you want to have fun with it, he's Jordan Montgomery in
Right.
kind of a way. Not exactly like you said. I think the parallel to draw there is Michaelis for so many different reasons, but just he's more Jordan Montgomery than he is Zach Gallen, right? So I think what you need is throughout the year you need pitchers to get you to the playoffs. And if that is a staff of Miles Michaelis's and Jose Quintana's and whoever the hell, you know, that's enough. In the playoffs, you need a bullpen and you need guys peaking. And people don't want to hear that. And it's always nice to have postseason experience in there too. But this is one of those where if all you can get is Aaron Nola and some bunk ass number two starting pitcher in your budget, and then some swing type guy, then you're not actually that much better than what you were last year. You're just trying to hope that they're not as bad as Adam Wainwright was, which won't happen because Adam Wainwright, God bless his soul, was one of the worst starting pitchers in the history of baseball last year. And somebody who's better than Jack Flaherty, who was good sometimes but pretty miserable a lot of other times that the Cardinals were able to get some resources for. So
just wait until they bring him back. Just wait until they bring Jack back.
Oh my God, how funny would that be? They trade for Fried, they signed Giolito and Flaherty, and then boom.
If we trade for Fried, I'm good with whatever comes next.
The last thing I want to say is I think also just to add to Glasnow, obviously healthy Glass. What I'm not even gonna say healthy. That's every pitcher. Glasnow and Nola is the domino effect for the bullpen. Like obviously last year, and that's not last year. It feels like it's been the last 7 years. We are chasing innings constantly, and the next thing you know, we got Alex Reyes out there blowing his arm out. And then you've got all this other stuff. We saw Gio not be what he was last year. We saw obviously the Helsley injury. Like that's what's going to happen when you're not getting innings. And I don't mean 8. That's not what I'm saying. 6. Yeah. When you're not getting 6 innings from your starters, that's what's going to happen. So the domino effect of even just adding 2. I'm not saying, that you not add 3. I'm not saying don't go get another guy. That's not what I mean by that. But because people misconstrue that. But then when you have a Michaelis at let's say a number 4, 3, 4, whatever you want to call it, and then you got Matz at the end, and you got that Thompson slash like you had talked about earlier. If you can get those guys giving you 5, but your top 3 are giving you 6, I mean, you're talking about a totally different pitching staff from top to bottom when that happens.
Yeah, it's all about pitchers stepping up at the right time. In modern baseball, a lot of how often do pitchers even go 6 innings, even like the top of the line pitchers? It doesn't happen a lot. What you need timely 6 inning performances. You need a sprinkled in 7th inning performance. You need a gutsy pitcher who's willing to gut it out to get the bullpen a little bit of rest. And the Cardinals haven't had that in a couple of years. Waino would get there sometimes, Michaelis would get there sometimes, but it doesn't really happen a lot. And that's why, in a lot of ways, I've kind of been the quantity over quality guy, even though I do want quality quantity.
Sandy Alcantara, imagine having that guy.
Yeah, there we go. I'm about that. Figure
the
that
220 inning pitcher that wins a Cy Young. Yeah. Whoever got that guy as an amateur is smart.
Yeah, yeah. Give that guy more of a voice, huh? But yeah. So that all I'm saying is that like you need to be about as sure as you possibly can be with whatever additions you bring in. And you can't think that just by being top heavy all of the sudden in the pitching staff that it's going to make you a better team, because the truth is it might very incrementally. That's just
we saw the Mets, right? We saw the Mets.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's all you literally have to honestly, probably Kale's generation outside of Clayton Kershaw, they signed the 2 greatest pitchers of his generation.
Yeah. Oh, easily.
And I'm not getting Adam Wainwright. We're not going back down that road, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like they signed those guys. And even at an advanced age, I think people thought, well, even with a slight regression or even a partial regression, they're still going to be better than most rotations. I mean, they didn't even sniff the playoffs, and now both those guys are on other teams.
Yeah. And they took our ace, Jose Quintana.
That's right.
Who I still want back. Can we get him back, please?
I was just going to say that, and the flip of that is, what else did the Mets do? They got Quintana, and then what did the Rangers do after the failure with DeGrom? They went out and addressed their issues in season. We're so focused on the offseason. We're so focused on the Cardinals, the huge pitching issues they have. But this is a two-pronged thing. It starts in the offseason and it finishes in season. We know that if they can shore up their team as a whole, not just the starting rotation, but the bullpen, if they can shore it up, it doesn't have to be premier. It just needs to get to a point where they can adjust in season to get what they need, whatever that is. Even if we're still clamoring for an ace and it ends up just being Nathan Eovaldi and Jordan Montgomery, although Eovaldi was already there, I'm just saying that, like, even if it is that, even if it is just two pitchers, even if it is bringing Jose Quintana back, like, let's not get so caught up in the starting pitching of it all and the high end starting pitching of it all to the point where not only does it cripple what they can do in season, but exactly how good they are during the season to get to a point where they have to adjust in season. And I want to see the whole picture, and the whole picture involves not only defense getting better and the offense getting more steady, it involves the bullpen getting better and the starters getting better. And that has to happen at once. And that's a quantity issue as much as it is a quality issue. And I think right now we're just so focused on the quality and needing an ace and needing an ace and needing a top of the line starter when arguably there isn't even one on the market, and either ace or a one on the market, because all of those guys have question marks. It's all about perspective there too. But there's just so many issues with the Cardinals that let's not pretend like they have the budget to be able to address it all. What they have is the budget to be able to get themselves in a position where they can address it in season.
And even then, like, no team, like the Diamondbacks and the Rangers are far from perfect teams. Far from it. Like, the Rangers had a dreadful bullpen. They had Leclerc and Chapman. And Spores. That was it. The Diamondbacks, had Evan Longoria and Emmanuel Rivera batting every day. Like, that's not – those two teams were not perfect by any means, but you've got to have, like you said, guys step up in the right times, and you've got to have players that have the ability to do that. Like, you can't just throw Michaelis and, Matt out there and say maybe they can step up. Well, no, you got to have players like Montgomery and Eovaldi who can do that, and they did it at the right time.
Yeah. And you also have to have your stars be stars. We saw it with Atlanta 2 years ago. We saw it with 3 years ago. Saw it with Philly 2 years ago, even though they didn't win. But obviously Alvarez. Then this year we saw with Corey Seager. Nolan and Goldie are going to have to be those guys come the biggest moments when you get to October. Kyle, last thing for me before we get, also, by the way, thank you again. Greatly appreciate you for coming on, man. We love having you on here. So we appreciate having you on.
I love talking it over with you guys. I'm sorry for monopolizing all your time running my stupid mouth.
Nope. We, everyone, literally everyone who watches on YouTube and listens on Apple and Spotify would much rather hear you than Caleb and I just yell at each other over Adam Wainwright. So we are very happy that you came on here. We greatly appreciate that. Last thing, as someone who is a king and lord of chaos, how awesome is it going to be when Mike Shildt takes the Padres to the World Series in 2024 on Cardinal Twitter? Go.
It's going to be hilarious. Even better, an NLCS between Skip Schumacher with the Marlins and Mike Shildt with the Padres. Can you imagine that?
Oh my goodness, I am here for it. I cannot wait to watch Twitter lose their minds when Mike Shildt, if Mike Shildt has some success. Speaking of the Padres, RIP to Peter Seidler, legend of an owner, legend from what I've read in the community. I did a little research on him, a little bit more, finding out today, evidently what he has done in San Diego, incredible things from what I have read. So RIP to that guy.
Yeah, it's horrible. That was horrible news. And now that you put me in a weird spot, because I was going to say something before you did that, and now I'm going to say it after that sadness.
Sorry. I went from
what I was going to say,
Mike Shildt, to that was on me. That's on me.
This is my last thing. But what I was going to say was it's even funnier if that NLCS matchup does happen and Matt Carpenter wins NLCS MVP. That'd be hilarious. And I kind of would rather see that happen than the Cardinals win the World Series, because I just want to see what Twitter would be like. That would be incredible.
Oh God, yeah, it's funny, it was awesome to see Matt Carpenter take the Padres for $5.5 million or whatever. But
good for him, dude. Good for him.
Right.
God, I loved it. I thought boy, this is the kind of world that I want to live in. This is the kind of world I want to be a part of. But
I wonder if he introduced his salsa to the San Diego market out there. Like that is the king for Latin food out there. I wonder if he brought that his salsa to San Diego out there.
They
that's
probably
so
hate
funny.
it.
So the other day we were joking around. I was asking people what their favorite M&M flavor is. Sometimes I just get interested in like dumb stuff. Like I'll just run across some M&Ms and be like, M&Ms rock. Let's have a conversation about M&Ms. And I asked people about that. And one of the pad people, Ryan Fisher, reminded me that I took a picture of like how I shop on a normal basis, like right as we started pad, when Prospects After Dark, whenever we did it, like whenever it started, I don't even know anymore. And it was a picture of me at the grocery store, and I had like, again, this is how I shop. I still shop. I'm gonna live until I'm 41, maybe. It was like a value pack of steaks, and I do not have a family, like a family value pack of steaks. I do not have a family. I was gonna eat all three of those things by myself as soon as I possibly could. And it was like a bottle of bourbon, a 6 pack of beer, like peanut butter M&Ms, and lo and behold, the Matt Carpenter salsa was a part of that. And it brought back terrible memories for my anus, because that was one of the most like vicious times of my life on a toilet. I will never forget what that runny mixture did to my runny stool. It was not a pleasant experience. So,
This is why you have to be on here more. This is exactly why, right there. That 45 seconds is the exact reason why you have to be on here. The rest was incredible, but that right there is the reason why. It's why we love you. So thanks again, man. I greatly appreciate it.
I'll talk about diarrhea whenever you guys want me to.
So I tweeted out that you're coming on and we're going to rank the essential bodily functions. That obviously number one. So there we go.
Oh, but do we have time for this? Can we actually do that?
We 100. First of all, we 100% have time for this.
All right. So
I got nothing going on.
Let me see if I can find it. So years ago, and I meant to do this when we were talking. Years ago, I ran a poll on Twitter, and maybe God, this is awkward with you guys, but maybe I'll just type "come" in and see if maybe. I ran a poll, and my question it was, and I love that this is happening right now. My question was, what's like the best feeling, right? Is pooping when you had to poop and you couldn't poop? Is it peeing when you've been holding it forever, or is it reaching climax? And it had so that's your natural reaction, right? But then like a day later, I had to hold my pee for like hours. And when I peed, it was maybe the greatest single moment of my entire life. Not even like bodily fluid experience. It might have been like the best I've ever felt in my entire life from head to toe. And I mean,
I actually agree with that. That probably is number one.
You are sharing the screen with a man who pees more than any human I've ever met in my life. Right,
especially when you're drinking.
The young guy, not me, not the older guy, the young guy. There is so he completely gets you. But I'm going to go ahead and throw in. There's nothing. I mean, I'm going to put in that conversation when you got to sneeze and you sneeze. That's sometimes like that's top tier. I can now go on with my life after that.
That's a good call. I didn't even think about that.
Yep. So something to think about as we leave. Well, hey, I hope everyone who listened to this comes back for the next one, because you never know what we're going to talk about.
Drop a comment below of what your favorite bodily fluid coming out of you is.
Oh, boy. YouTube is going to be incredible this week. YouTube is going to be incredible.
Oh God, I am so disappointed that I cannot find this stupid poll. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to let you guys down. I meant to.
Maybe Elon flagged it.
He might have. I don't know if there's any polls on here anymore. I think they got rid of them all. Brendan Schaefer's the only one who's allowed to do a poll anymore.
He's like, would you be satisfied with this offseason? Michael Waka, Seth Lugo, and Trevor and Seth Manis. It's like 72% says yes.
Oh, that's so true.
Oh, anything else, Caleb? You got anything else for Kyle before we let him get out of here?
No, I'm all out.
All right.
Fresh out.
All out of
I'm
love.
about to eat dinner.
We're so lost without you.
I have something for you guys before we get off. I'm sorry to monopolize more of your time.
No, do not apologize.
He's retired. He has no life.
I am retired. I work at a golf course. I need
He's retired at 49.
This is the greatest thing of all time.
I was going to say a minute ago, and I was trying to do the math, right? So I'm 37, and I am technically 13 years away from getting my pension for the municipality I work at. And it dawned on me, and it's, full government pension, all of that. And at that point, I would be with the organization for 30 years. And when you said I'm 49, hoping to get to 50, I was thinking, this motherfucker's already retired. He's gonna beat me. But no,
Retired at 48.
oh, that is awesome. I'm so happy
48
for
was
you.
it.
We've had at my place, we've had a mass exodus of some of our older employees finally retiring instead of sticking around. And just to see like the joy on their face, the relief, the accomplishment that reflect on what you've accomplished has been really cool over the last year and a half, as so many of the people that I know have started to retire. And I'm having these moments, not realizing I have 13 more years to go.
Hey, one day I hope to have those moments. Right now, I just get up, I go for a little walk here in New Orleans, walk around, I stare at the mansions, the multi-million-dollar mansions, while I'm listening to Biggie Smalls on my headphones, laughing at the idiocy of all of it, right? That I am doing this. Then I come back, have a little coffee, watch a little Pat McAfee, maybe a little MLB.com, talk to Caleb through text. Then I go play golf or I work at the golf course. And so one day I will reflect on that teaching that I did for 25 years. But I walked out of that classroom. I loved it. But I said, I'm putting that behind me and we're moving on.
Oh, that's great.
So
Congratulations.
I'm pumped for you that you only have 13 years. I remember the countdown. I think I started the countdown. I taught for 25 years. I think I started the countdown at 24.
Oh, it's so good.
I got 24 left. Let's go.
Is working at a golf course the perfect post-career job?
It's almost silly that that's what I do that I go to work and they pay me to do that. Now they don't necessarily pay me very well, but again, it's a retirement gig. I get to play free golf. Yesterday we had, and we're at a nice course. We had a club tournament. Our team won, by the way, shout out to us. And I had donuts, pizza, and played golf yesterday and then got paid to do so. So it's not a bad gig.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
My friends still hate me. I will text them and see how their workday is going. And I do not get nice replies from them. So,
Okay, so the question I had for both of you is, of the pitchers on the market, what is the lowest bar for the best pitcher that the Cardinals could acquire? Does that make sense?
That's a great question. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Caleb, you go first.
My answer is Jordan Montgomery. I don't think you can go lower than that for your number one, and maybe like they have a good chance of actually rebounding here. Because who would be below that? Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't really like him very much. Yeah. Like I like Sonny Gray. I think I'd put him maybe right next to Monty, maybe even slightly above in terms of how good he is right now. Yeah. So I think my answer would be Jordan Montgomery. But if I'm being totally honest with you, with all the hype this offseason's gotten, if Jordan Montgomery is the best pitcher we get, I'll be disappointed. I'll be honest. Yeah. I'll be disappointed. And it doesn't mean that it can't work. It doesn't mean it won't work. And it might even be the smart way to go. But I will be disappointed if I'm being honest.
Let me ask. Okay, I'm going to answer my question with a question. What if the three guys you brought in were Montgomery, Gray, and Rodriguez? What if those were your three guys?
So they're adding 65 to 70 million in payroll?
I don't know what those numbers look like. You're probably right. Okay, so here we go. We went back. Okay, we'll skip that. I mean, do you see where I was? Okay, Waka has been the subject. I hate all the Cardinals.
He's the lowest? What's happening here? If they only get Michael Waka, we're fucked.
My answer is Sonny Gray. But honestly, I think you almost have to bring in one of the top three if you're the Cardinals and you view it like you talked about earlier. I honestly think it has to be Nola, Yamamoto, and Snell. And people will argue that maybe Yamamoto's not one of the top three. I think the name alone, and at 25, I think he is. So I honestly believe that if let's say Sonny Gray is that number 4 guy there on the market, if that's it, I think fans are going to be disappointed. I honestly, truly believe that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So my answer would be you got to get one of the three. Right. Even though
if they bring back Adam Wainwright, I will jump off my balcony. I love Adam Wainwright to death, but that guy earned every bit of his retirement. Go enjoy it, Adam.
His first album, he will do a reunion tour and an album tour same year.
I don't think he has a labrum anymore. I think he gave it away for 200 wins. I think he did.
Yeah, to me, I think that the Cardinal fans and the viewers will say you got to get one of those top three. I don't know that I necessarily agree because I do think if you get Gray and 2 other guys, to me, man, if you get Glass now, then we can change that discussion. Yeah, let me say it like that. Like if you make a trade and you end up with Tyler, then I think that discussion changes. but I don't know that trade happens before their signings. That's what
What's
I'll
your
say.
answer here, Kyle? Who would be the lead? Like, I know that you're not maybe even as emotionally invested as some fans are in the major league team, but who would be the guy where you're like that? They can make a solid offseason work with this guy to get to the trade deadline.
My first thought was yours, Caleb. I thought Jordan Montgomery, Sonny Gray. Like I like there's a way to make it work with those two at the top of your three, but it can't be they can't be at the top of your two, right? Like if you're going to do two and a swing man, that unfortunately that's just not good enough. I mean, I hate to be that way. Like if it ends up being the top of the three, and maybe you can make the finances work for like Gray / Montgomery, Maeda, and whoever the hell else. Like maybe there's a way to make that work and make your team better. Yeah, but I don't think that you can get away without something like Aaron Nola if you're only going to do 2.5 starters. There's no way that you're going to make your team better and what it needs to be for the season until you can augment it. Like it's just I guess my belief that that they if they do go Gray or Montgomery as their quote unquote headline, even with the trade market involved, I don't think that I don't think that there's a way to get as good as they can be or need to be with only two starters at that point, or 2.5, and whatever that swingman looks like. That you would still have to commit to a third starter at that point.
Especially then, because you need both those guys to be healthy,
Yeah,
or you just have Jordan Montgomery in your rotation from last year again.
exactly. Yeah, and that didn't
So
work, right? Because
I might
what you
change my
had.
answer. Aaron Nola. They need Aaron Nola. That might be my
That's kind
answer.
of what I was saying.
I
I
think that
think
might
it's
be
Sonny
where
Gray,
we're
but I
at,
think the actual answer
unfortunately.
is you've got to get one of those top three guys. And I just don't see Blake Snell as a St. Louis Cardinal.
And Yamamoto,
I am so sorry. I do have one last question because I think it's a hot and button topic, and we don't have to get into why it is a hot button topic. But do you think Trevor Bauer pitches in major leagues this year? Do you think he's back in Major League Baseball?
Okay, so I have no, as someone who tries their hardest to stay out of controversy by being controversial, I I think that there hasn't been a more perfect union in the world than that Saudi baseball league in Trevor Bauer. That's what I think.
that's
I,
yeah, true. That's
I
100% true.
and that, I guess that's a way of answering the question without actually answering it.
We're
I,
fine
I
with
think
that.
I think it just depends on how little he's willing to take. I do think some organization would take a chance on him probably at this point, with his name being cleared. Um, I think the way that he cleared it is kind of a perfect example of why, if I was running an organization, I wouldn't want anything to do with it. Like make it this
Right,
flashy,
exactly.
in the media to people. Like at that point, it's not necessarily about changing the organization or changing the minds of people running organizations or teammates. It's about changing the public image of yourself, which isn't going to happen. That's not how this world works anymore, unfortunately. So you're so naive and caught up in your own ego that you can't see beyond your own personal motivations for things. Uh, so again, whether he's guilty of the other accusations that's been levied upon him is beyond me. Uh, whether people are treating him unfairly for uh, whatever is beyond me. I don't really know. I just know that like there's the amount of ego. We all know that every athlete has a tremendous amount of ego to get to the point where they need to be the athlete that they are. But this is more of like an insecurity driven ego, which I just don't trust, no matter how good he is. And he can be really goddamn good pretty frequently. But I see that Saudi league, and I think, oh boy, if ever there was a league, Robinson Cano's there, Bartolo Colon's there. Like
Oh
these are
my gosh.
people who
When is
are
Aroldis Chapman going to get there?
probably in 2 years. I would imagine I'll have a really shitty year
yeah.
next year, and then be over there in 2 years. And I just think that I think that boy, that if you talk about, and I don't even know if it'd be for a couple of years, and then he finds his way back to the States or whatever. But boy, does that Saudi baseball league really feel like the right place for Trevor Bauer at this point in his life.
You know how bad of a how much of a just weirdo individual you have to be to make Terry Francona hate you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. That, and he probably still hates him too. It's not even a matter of
Oh, I
like, oh, it's a
guarantee it.
moment.
Probably more now. He probably hates
Yeah,
him more now.
yeah.
He's probably like I was vindicated in that hatred there, and I love Terry Francona. So anyone Terry doesn't like, stay. I don't want him. That's where I'm
I'm
at.
with you, boy. I agree. Real fast, gentlemen. I found the poll.
All right.
Give us the results.
Okay, so here it is. It says hi. Boy. So you have these looking glass moments sometimes online where you realize how trash you are. Okay, it says hi and then enter. Your political opinions on both sides are a joke. Let's do a poll that matters and show how great representative democracy can be. Which of these is the best? Orgasm, peeing after holding it, pooping after holding it. And orgasm got 38.8% of the vote. Peeing after holding it got 28.9% of the vote. And pooping after holding it got like 32.3% of the vote. So it's like the John Jay of polls is what it ended up being. It's a spray chart all over. No pun intended. And now I wish I had intended the pun.
Actually, that pun was that intended. We're gonna say that one was definitely intended.
It wasn't, and then I would like to reclaim it if at all possible.
You have it. You take it. I think you revisit the poll at the next election and you throw sneezing in there.
I will as soon as we get.
It will get 0 votes. It'll get 0 votes.
Yeah, almost certainly. Once we get our Democrat and Republican nominees for president, I'll throw this out there and I'll throw the caveat of sneezing when you got to sneeze in there, and we'll see how that gets blown out. See how that changes the numbers.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Man, as always, we greatly appreciate you coming on here. You're welcome anytime. We have a blast, but also love to get the insight and the logical. Just again, Caleb and I try to view things as logical. We like to have that. It's great to have that third view in there that to just bring in everything. And we love what you do on Twitter. We love everything about you, man. You're one of our favorites.
You guys are the best. Thank you so much. I feel the same way. It's awesome to converse with you whenever the opportunity presents itself on both Twitter and on this particular platform. I love it.
Fantastic. As always, Kyle Reis, man, big fan. Go follow him on Twitter. It's worth it. If nothing else, for the poll that's coming up in November. Like, if nothing else, that poll alone is going to be worth it. Caleb, you got anything else, brother, before we get out of here?
I do not.
All right.
That's my hot take of the year.
Man of many words. Man of many words. He probably has to pee. He drank that coffee.
I do.
Gotta pee.
I do. This was a big coffee.
All right, guys. Hey, as always, we appreciate you all. We will talk to you soon. Have an amazing Thanksgiving if we don't talk to you before that. Go Cards.